All right. Welcome to the channel. It's the Portable Internet Alexander Lawrence Book Talk. And I've been watching a lot of other videos and of course, I'm kind of a mumbler and an itcher and a scratcher and a cougher. So I'll try to reel it in and I'll try to speak in kind of more enunciate my words and be more aggressive toward whatever. Okay, so we're talking about John Ashbery. Here's his he won the Pulitzer Prize for poetry, National Book Award, every award. He during my lifetime, John Ashbery's been kind of like the guy, the most. He was a professor. He published books that were pretty good. I kind of let's see. Wow, he published like 30 books. So when I got an Ashbery, I think A Wave Selected Poems had come out. April Galleons, I think, was the first new book. I remember Flowchart, Hotel La Tremont. I remember giving that to a friend. And the Stars Were Shining. I don't remember that one. And so Chinese Whispers sounds familiar. And then I got there's a new book I have that's kind of like there was like stuff that came out after he died. Notes from the Air, I think it's called. Okay, so this is a new. This is fairly new. Then I guess it's a new update. So John Ashbery, he was born in 1927. He went to Harvard and Columbia. Went to France. He spoke French. He had a French boyfriend too. I had his book too. I don't remember his name actually, but you could probably look it up. And I thought his poetry was pretty interesting. I don't know how much poetry he published, but he had one book. I saw him read either in San Francisco or Long Beach. So John Ashbery, I mean, how do you describe his poetry? I mean, he's definitely a lot of the modernist writers. He's influenced by them. He's kind of a surrealist. There's French literature. So when I started writing poetry, I mean, I kind of, because I was from California and I was familiar with Bukowski and the Venice poets, the Beyond Baroque poets, and the Karma Bums were my friends. I mean, most of the people, there was a kind of a feeling of beat influence in Bukowski and Henry Miller and some of those guys. And I guess maybe Dennis Cooper was like the most sophisticated because he was, and the poetry kind of changed a little bit in the Beyond Baroque era when they started going to New York a lot. And Dennis Cooper, I mean, he's been in Europe, maybe over 30 years now. So let's read a little bit of John Ashbery. How is he different? How does he differ from these other? The New York school was like, yeah. I mean, when I got into Ashbery, there was like I still have some tapes somewhere with Kenneth Koch and John Ashbery. Kenneth Koch, who seems like sort of a real kind of conventional poet now, is kind of lumped in with the New York school with Frank O'Hara and John Ashbery and the New York. I mean, there's a few books and about the New York school. So I'm going to read for an early poem. This is called The Picture of Little J.A. in a Prospect of Flowers. Darkness falls like a wet sponge, and Dick gives Genevieve a swift punch in the pajamas. Anoint thee, witch. Her tongue, from a previous ecstasy, releases thoughts like little hats. He clapped me first during the eclipse. Afterward, I noted his manner much altered, but he sending at the time certain handsome jewels, I durst not seem to take offense. In a far recess of summer, monks are playing soccer. So I mean, like, Ashbery. I mean, he's like using kind of like language from children's stories. There's like a little bit of surreal. I mean, the wet sponge, and there's always like a kind of a pictorial element with Ashbery, and it's not a logic thing. I mean, well, the story, because I met Ashbery and I met John Wieners too, and I think there were, I think in a class somewhere I read that John Wieners was kind of described as a kind of a conventional poet, but when they talked to him trying to explain his poetry, he didn't really make any sense. Ashbery, it was like people found his poetry hard to follow, but when they talked to him in person, he seemed very sensible. So that's, I think that might be true, but I don't really. I just felt like that Ashbery was just. I mean, he kind of hit. He kind of became kind of conventional, but in a way, the double trim between. Let's see what else. Let's get later into the. No, that's a long poem. There's some short, but Houseboat Days. Well, maybe we should go to Shadows right now. Well, how far does this go into it? Houseboat Days was good. A wave. So yeah, there's a wave in here. So that's kind of like where I kind of picked up. I think. Oh, actually, I think a wave is like a long poem. And he did like prose poetry. And okay, so he wrote a kind of a Baudelarian poem. Okay, here's one that I liked. At North Farm, somewhere someone is traveling furiously toward you at incredible speed, traveling day and night through blizzards and desert heat, across torrents, through narrow passes. But he will know where to find you, recognize you when he sees you, give you the thing he has for you. Hardly anything grows here, yet the granaries are bursting with meal. The sacks of meal piled to the rafters. The streams run with sweetness, fattening fish. Birds darken the sky. Is it enough that the dish of milk is set out at night, that we think of him sometimes and always, with mixed feelings? So, yeah, sometimes you don't know who exactly he's talking about in the poem. And it just seems like they're like kind of like random thoughts, and kind of there's always some sort of kind of looseness about Ashbery that's pretty interesting. I mean, and you might have to read it a couple times just to see what's kind of going on. And yeah, he did the tennis court oath. I don't know, maybe is that in here? That seemed like a real yeah, some trees is kind of, a lot of people read from that book because that seems a little bit easier to digest. But once you get to the tennis court oath, it just seems pretty wild. Huh. Yeah. It just, he sort of, it seems like he uses a lot of in media res, and just kind of things kind of start in the middle and kind of unwind. I mean, he did write a flow chart, which is like maybe a real difficult poem. But I mean, I would read John Ashbery. I've kind of translated John Ashbery poems into my own like language, because it just seemed like, John Ashbery wrote things this way, and how would I just thought to myself, how would I write that myself? So that's that. That's John Ashbery. He died a few years ago, but he's a modern poet. And when I did some poetry readings recently, I was kind of shocked that people didn't know who John Ashbery was, because I thought he was sort of a well-known poet. But let's move on. Thanks for listening. Add a like. Watch it again. Watch all my videos on all the poetry. Okay, so we'll see you.